How's it going?
What's up, brother? How you doing, my man?
Doing great. Doing real good.
Fantastic.
Real well. Well, it's Monday. Big weekend of college basketball. You put yourself out there again on Sunday.
Yeah.
You played it right. That you made money. Let's see. I have the results here. They'll be going across the bottom of the screen. So, where do you want to start? Which one of your? You gave us 5 games on Sunday.
I did.
2 and 3, but let me know where you want to start.
Well, I guess we'll start with the top there. Start with we'll go Purdue.
Okay.
This was so now collectively when I say you would have won money, it was because I had 2 money lines in there. One didn't go well, one did go well. So if you bet equal units on all those things, you would have barely come out ahead minus the juice and stuff on losses. But that was including the most horrific, terrible bad beat. It was horrible. I've seen worse, but it was amongst the worst you could get. So obviously, Purdue hosted Wisconsin on senior day at Mackey Arena, and they were 9.5-point favorite, and they were in control, throughout the game. They never could really get it pushed it out to that above the 16 to the 25-point range, where you like to do when you're taking a team to win the game by 10 or 9.5 in this case. But so we'll just fast forward because we'll do game summary later. But Purdue was up 16 with like a minute and a half left in the game. And Wisconsin's kind of coming down like, you're still mathematically in the game. You can hit a few shots, hit a few threes, you get a stop. And, Purdue actually had a couple of big buckets that kind of put it up to that range. And usually at this point, especially on somebody's senior day, Purdue's kind of calling the dogs off, or they're going to kind of respond to like who you're leaving in the game, and if you're going to full court press and do, dizzy bastard stuff like that at the end of the game on somebody's senior day, then, Matt Painter's going to, do match that accordingly. And obviously early in the game, Zach Edey had a scare where he rolled his ankle. Braden Smith had a scare where he rolled his ankle, where we landed on a ref. Didn't get out of the way. Just a brilliant officiating crew once again. They've been stellar. We'll get into that later too. But when I saw so I put these picks out there, and then a little later I saw that Courtney Green was one of the officials, and he is an absolute clown wagon of the highest order. I would like to see him actually get investigated, because I'd have to look up the stats, but going back to the last like 3 or 4 years, Purdue is something like 3-27 versus the spread in his last 30 games. I mean, like, come on, man, that's some Goomba stuff going on there. I mean, there's no way, Tim Donaghy has got nothing on this dude. He is just cleaning up. Can't believe he's not in prison. But anyways, there needs to be a formal investigation on that clown. But so as soon as I saw that, I'm like, well, this is probably more or less fuckoed. But I still think it's a good bet. Like, despite his best efforts, I feel like Purdue should still win that, by that margin. So let's fast forward to the end of the game. Purdue's up, 16 points, a little under 2 minutes, like minute 45, something like that. And Wisconsin comes down and rattles home a 3. Kind of got a lucky bounce went in. If that doesn't go in, Purdue gets the rebound. They're just going to salt that one away, and they're going to win by about that same margin. You won't even get in the free throw game at that point, because I think at that point, Wisconsin's like, there's no reason to even really try anymore. And so Purdue's really at this point just trying to look for an opportunity to get subs in the game, because once he felt like the margin was at a safe margin for Purdue to win the game, he wanted to get, some of the seniors recognized, some of the walk-ons in that are our seniors to get a little playing time, get their name in the box score. And so Matt Painter, so Illinois, all right, he was saying Illinois, so we played Illinois earlier, my bad. Wisconsin comes down, rattles home like a shaky 3, but it goes in, they cut it to 13. There is like, I don't know, just a little over a minute at this point. So Purdue decides to go down, and rather than even take a shot, they just kind of like milk the clock down to a little over like 30, 35 seconds, something like that left in the game, and not even take a shot, just basically get the turnover right there at like half court, with like 30 some 40 seconds, something like that left in the game. And just to get the subs in, just to get the walk-ons in, the seniors in to get some playing time. And so obviously now you've taken out, any of your really, really elite players at this point in the game, and walk-ons come in there. So Wisconsin comes down, actually has to work for a little bit of a tough possession versus the defense because these guys are fired up to play. And then they rattle home another shaky 3. So you're like, okay, well, this went from like 16 to like 10 in like 45 seconds, not certainly like not ideal, but now there's like 15 seconds left, 20 seconds of the game. Normally you just take the ball in, you just dribble the clock out, game is over, right? Well, they get it. Wisconsin still got a few of their stars in, including AJ Storr, and he decides to check, Chase Martin at like half court and like pick his pocket with 15, 12, 13 seconds left and goes up and just slams it home when clearly like Purdue's totally called the dogs off, and you're not expecting someone to lunge at you because normally a class situation is like they're not trying to score on you. They're not trying to show you up. We didn't even try that at all in the last minute and a half at all to score, obviously. And, you have a walk on there and you think like, this is their moment to, I don't know, do something. I mean, they're probably not going to shoot it, obviously, but like, you're just going to go in like you're pressing the walk on and you're trying to get a steal. I mean, if you were going to do the foul game and you were really trying to win the game, you would have done that, the minute 20, minute 15, they could have done that. And I have no problem with that. You're trying to win a basketball game. You're trying to get off the schneid here. But like, just pick, taking a walk-on's wallet at half court just because you want to be an asshole, it's just a classless move. So he gets it, dunks it. Purdue, obviously, at that point, is only up by 8 with just a few seconds left in the game. They throw it in, and the clock winds down. And the other greasy thing about that is people that had the under bet that went over on that basket by a point as well. Obviously, we didn't get involved in any of that. But if you had a Purdue minus 9.5 and an under ticket, 140, whatever that number was, it went over by that basket at the very end. And so, like, if you had a 2-team parlay where you had Purdue in the under, that was almost lock city, with 45 seconds left. You're like, oh, we got 5 points, 4.5 points to spare. Either way, brutal. So, like, that had to be on Scott Van Pelt. I've not checked it out, but I guarantee you be on his bad beats. It was absolutely horrific, I'm sure they had a lot of like fun sounds like that we usually like to make. So, out of the gates of the ones I really liked a lot, that one went FUBAR based on some Clown Town, and unfortunately that's sometimes that's sports betting, but it they don't rattle either one of those 3 zone. They just runs out the clock. They don't even probably go for a steal. But, who knows? Maybe AJ Storr had money on the over and Wisconsin cover. I don't know. I can't imagine the head coach liking that. I heard things by Wisconsin fans saying that like they were upset by the way the game was officiated, and so they just wanted to be jerks at the end or something, or playing out the game. And I'm like, that's the silliest thing ever, because if anybody watched how that game was officiated, it was totally inconsistent. It was a total shit show. Just brutal fouls, non-calls, like just horrible calls. Purdue actually had a goaltend. They scored a basket. Courtney Green, who was at mid-court on a play, calls 5 seconds later, calls back the play to have it looked at then, and then they review it and they decided, even though it was off the cylinder, whatever, it was above the rim or whatever, it was off the cylinder, that they decided to call that a goaltend after a basket was made. So a lot of sketch situations when he's involved in the game, and unfortunately, that's 2 in a row. Well, both times I was like, crap. I think Purdue, like the Michigan State game, he was also part of that. So basically, his name is on there, and they released that about an hour and a half before the must draft the game because he was reffing. You can, Brian Newbert's very good about that. He posts something out there. He even made a Twitter thing like, hey, wagerers bet accordingly, Courtney, and then obviously highlighted the 3 refs that were in the game, Courtney Green being, the first of them. So it seems like kind of an inside joke, but if he's actually reffing a Purdue game, he loves loading up on these underdogs, and clearly there's a tendency here. I really don't know how you're not investigated when your record versus spread when one team is playing is that horrific. It's literally, mind you, Purdue has won countless games over the last 3 to 4 seasons. So for Purdue to always never cover when this joker is out there, it's just absolutely pathetic. So anyways, I was wrong on that one. I mean, I have to take that because I put that out there, but that was total garbage. So, usually something like that happens, you get lucked out and something goes your way later down the road for hopefully like a bigger payout. Next game, Samford. Samford, I don't have the spread in front of me, but Samford did cover that spread and they won the game. They actually won their conference tournament tonight, a team that Purdue played first game of the season. And they're actually a very good, they're very well coached by Bucky McMillan. Locally here, he's a legend. He coached at a local high school, actually Mountain Brook down here. He's won countless state titles as a high school coach. And they finally got him to go to Samford the last few years, and he's been very successful. And they played Purdue, and they unfortunately did get boat raced, I think, by 53, but I don't think they shot the ball particularly well. It was the first game of the season. Purdue's got something to prove after last year's debacle. So kind of a perfect storm of things there. I don't think they'll play again, but if they were to play again, I don't think Purdue would win by 53. They would probably win by a comfortable margin because, they're very, very good. But, it's one of those things where Purdue's playing well. They weren't necessarily shooting the ball well. They don't really have the size to hang in there with Purdue. So, but if you get them in the right matchup, they are going to be a very dangerous tournament. Watch them play. They have some dudes. So they covered, and then obviously today they outright won their conference tournament. So that's a name to look out for. If they're in the right matchup, they are going to be trouble for somebody. I promise you that. So they had a nice little win and cover. Indiana. Now, this is one I've been talking about for a few weeks on here. My buddy Josh, he kind of ragged on me. I really thought that for a couple of weeks, just the way the schedule set up and the way Michigan State's been playing recently, that they would run into a lot of trouble midweek against Northwestern. They did find a way to win that game. And I don't think IU is great by any means, but they've been playing better. And I knew their last game at home, they were going to just probably come up with some magic BS because it's a very IU thing to do, especially when they're having what we consider a down season for them. I mean, it's surely going to be an NIT season unless they make some kind of incredible win. They probably have to win the Big Ten tournament, I would say, to make the NCAA tournament. I don't think they can make it otherwise. Maybe they can stack up wins and maybe get on the bubble, but I don't foresee that. So, anyways, they host Michigan State, and they jumped out to a 20-5 lead, and then Trey Galloway, one of Indiana's best players, pretty much the dude that facilitates everything for IU. He actually got injured or something happened to him where he didn't come back in the game. Ice on his knee or whatever. It wasn't, I don't think, season ending or anything like that, but it was, I don't know if it was precautionary. I don't know what happened, but he didn't play again. When he left the game, Indiana was up 20-5. And then Michigan State made a huge run to cut that deficit to even go ahead by, I think, 7, 8, 9, 10 points. I mean, 3 or 4 possessions for sure. And I kind of was like, oh man, what does Indiana do? And they just kind of punched them back, got to where it kind of went back and forth. And at the very end, despite some very questionable officiating, there was a foul called on Indiana where they're both running down the court, and a check call going one way was like play on the other end, and it really kind of helped Michigan State. They're a good free throw shooting team, and just went back and forth. Indiana just made a play, so they did end up covering that plus 4.5. I think if Galway doesn't get injured, they probably win that game 5 to 10 points. And me, I just see a team in Michigan State, even though they've got all the talent in the world and some tremendous upside. And they very well, when they get, Big Ten tournament, they're going to get a chance right out of the gate to show how good they are. If they get into a tournament, which I think they will ultimately get into a tournament. Now, I don't recommend them losing to Minnesota in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. If they lose that, I think they'll be a 10 at best, maybe an 11 in a play-in, and maybe not there. It really depends on who upsets people. A lot of people have this debate like, well, is Indiana State good enough or whatever? When you watch Indiana State, they look like a tournament team, but they go by metrics as well. So they pass your eye test. But, what's going to draw more viewers, Indiana State or Michigan State? And everybody knows that answer is Michigan State. So, it'd be interesting to see when they have to make decisions like that, what direction they go. I mean, the committee changes, and it's one of those things where, they just, so it'll be interesting what happens there. But I thought it was a good spot for Indiana to cover. They won outright. So once again, if you made equal bets or what I usually do, what I like to do is if you make $100 wager per game, I did more than that for easy math. You do like half a unit on a money line. So that way, as long as they cover, you still won money. You still win, minus the juice, you won half your money, you doubled your money, more or less. But if they win and they cover, now depending on the spread, you could take that $150 bet you made, and now that's, $380, $360, that you risked, and then plus your $150 back. So, you can be at $500 on $150 risked on, something you really like that. So, if you did a full even units, you're definitely ahead, even certainly to this point, but throughout even the course of the day. And so that's one of the money lines I threw out there. Unfortunately, I'd gone back and forth with some banter, and I really liked Ohio State in their game. I liked Nebraska in their game. The teams that were Penn State, other teams that just the better teams playing, they're just playing better right now to cover their spreads. And I didn't throw those out there because I really didn't want to put 7, 8, 9 picks there on a Sunday, obviously after, Bloody Ramen Sunday a few weeks ago. So I didn't really want to get a little greasy on that. But they did too. I didn't post those obviously, but my buddy, I sent him stuff, and I actually did the same thing the week before. And so I just need to put all these things out there clearly because it'd really bump up my record on what you see. But so it's right about that and the money line on those. Then I really did think, I was very surprised by this. I know Illinois was coming off a disappointing loss to Purdue. I knew they put everything they had into that Purdue game. It was their Super Bowl. They had circled it, ad nauseum. Their players were in for it. And the way Iowa's been playing, I thought it was a home run spot for Iowa to be at home to win the game outright and to cover a couple, 2 points, something like that, just a few points there. So that gets a little close when it's there, but I really thought that they would win that game, and they just did not shoot that well. I mean, they don't play great defense. That was actually a lower scoring game for both those teams, but they don't play great defense, so they don't really get it done there. But usually at home, they really are firing all cylinders, shooting. They've been shooting the ball very well. They've been playing a lot better. They have a lot to play for. They had worked themselves into the edge of the bubble, first 4 out, second 4 out lists, to where you get that Illini win. All of a sudden now, boom, you're up to at worst first 4 out, and maybe even beyond that, depending on what happens. But you're right there where they're going to look at you. You've got 19, 21s in the Big Ten, not in the Big Ten, but in the Big Ten Conference, and you have that many wins, and you're going to have some quality wins out there with a tough schedule. You're gonna get yourself on, some lists if you're comparing them to, let's say, a Providence or something. I just think they would get in over a team like that. That's right there on the cusp as well. So they actually really let me down. They were in the game there for a while, but like once Illinois kind of got that little margin on them, they could never really cut back into that. I mean, they try as they might, but Illinois played really, really well. They played like a team that rebounded really well from a Purdue game where they lost, and so I was wrong there. Those are usually home run spots, but once again, you got to play some defense. And Illinois D'd up. They played way better defensively that game than I thought that they would, and so that's that was a really nice win for Illinois. So I was wrong on that one. And then to finish off, James Madison was up big in this game. And they let Texas State kind of hang around, as I always like to say, play with their food a little bit. And they actually had to battle it out. And I think only won like 4 points, something like that during the end. But it was very they were at that margin there for a while. And then I don't know, took their eye off the prize. Tonight, they actually ended up slamming it home and winning their conference tournament, too. They're going to be an extremely dangerous team no one wants to play. They've already won at Michigan State, first game of the season. I think they got kind of like a bad loss in there, but I think they would have been an at-large team anyways. I have to look that up, but I know that, they were going to certainly be a threat. So all people in the bubble, they're probably happy that they won their conference tournament because they had a resume to where they might get an at-large, and now that other team gets in, and now they just stole one from you, just a bid stealer. So that was probably released to anybody that last team that gets in the field. They should really be thankful. They should be sending Christmas cards and thank you letters to James Madison. So they were unable to close that one like that. Tonight, I think they slaughtered they slaughtered the championship game. They won pretty big. I'm pretty sure. So went 2-3 overall with 1-1 for a money line picks. So if you put equal units on them, even that half unit on the ones, you would come out a little bit ahead with the juice. But it was, to me, that's subpar, to be honest with you. But that is still with a bad beat. So if Purdue wins that, you're quite a bit ahead, even though you're 3-2 with one money line hit. So I can't, one of the worst beats of the season. So I can't beat myself up too bad. But anyway, so that's how that went. But it's not a ramen day, not King of the Hill day either. But we're getting there. Hang tight, because the people that will be commenting on here and my friends, they always ask me for my advice, and I send them stuff. And I should just send all that stuff and put it on the thing. And I'm going to really start doing that, But anyways, no ramen Sunday.
That's all that matters. You got to eat. All right. There were quite a few big games as well. Some interesting scores. Let's see if I can pull them up here. This is Saturday.
Saturday, huge last weekend.
Yeah,
of college basketball. It's always great. You can tell everybody's ramping up.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Well, the first one that stood out to me was Houston, Kansas. Just a massive blowout. At Houston, sure, but I think that, easy analysis here. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it. I think this was more about Houston is what they are. That didn't surprise me how they performed, but I think that in many regards, Kansas got exposed, for lack of a better term. Doesn't surprise me, but I think that it doesn't matter what I think. But as far as committee and people that are filling out their brackets, I think that it's kind of buyer beware with Kansas. What are your thoughts?
I hope like hell they're in Purdue's region as a 3 or maybe even a 4 at this point. Now, I think they actually might drop down to a 4 line, even though they've got a good resume. And I say that because it was announced today that Hunter Dickinson and McCullough are both not playing in the Big 12 tournament because of the injury they sustained, which is, without those two, they're not even a tournament team. I mean, not even. I mean, they wouldn't they didn't have them like a month ago. I mean, McCullough's been in and out injured, but Dickinson, I think he dislocated his shoulder. I don't know if dislocated it. And I think honestly, they're looking as like we need to get rest as we play in this thing and get beat up by the Big 12. Then we're really going to be in sorry shape for the NCAA tournament. So it's interesting to see what happens if that news, because if they're not playing, I can't see them making a very good run in the Big 12 tournament. I didn't see them making a big run in with them. So if they suffer like a bad loss or something, and they can be 5 seed line, NCAA tournament will they'll drop you down. They'll drop you down a line with injuries or 2 lines. Some are in several lines depending on what you've done. And their resume is still going to hold up, and they got their name ran. Kansas. Rock Chalk Jayhawk action. They don't want to have like people with pitchforks and torches getting pissed at the tournament committee. So, I mean, I can't see him falling like. I don't even think it'd be like a 6 seed. I mean, resumes too, but like, if this guy say they're not playing or they're injured, and the committee finds out about it, like it's official before, they could get dropped that far. I mean, I think they'll end up before. I mean, maybe a 5. It really, like without them playing, because they're going to want to say, "Hey, are you able to play?" I mean, you never know what they do with these situations. They're going to do something that's going to make the bracket fill out and be easy for them. So it's actually a good thing for them because they'll be able to like move them someplace and justify it by whatever they say. So like they were probably a 3 going in, maybe 4, but they're without them. They're in the world hurting. I think they're a super fade team come tournament time, anyways. You got to see a bracket, and unfortunately, the betting market for Kansas now, especially with these injuries, is like you were going to get a little bit of value on underdogs, but hell, they might be underdogs in their own game.
Yeah,
and really, I could, it depends on who they play, but I think they'll be easy pickings, but that's another story. Now that just further, like all things being equal, obviously we're huge Purdue fans. We've been saying it for weeks. If I had to blindly take one team to make the Final Four, I would just say Houston. I've been saying it for a while. They can win different ways. Defensively, they can suffocate you. They're just a damn good team. They're very well coached. You can beat them like everybody else in the country, but when you see them play big, and I do think they're getting a bump. I mean, a lot of people think that the Big 12 has been the best conference all year long as far as throughout. There's a lot of very competitive teams, but I think the fact that Kansas has all this cachet, and a lot of that's because they're very hard to beat at home, even when they lost some this year. But they lost at least one loss to BYU. But they're a team that like if that's usually they've been the banner carrier for that conference for decades. Baylor's jumped in there, when Drew took over. Now Houston's in that conference, but I realized Houston came from a smaller conference, came in there right away and started dominating. I mean, they've been dominating that conference this year. I mean, they're very good. They have excellent point guard play. But so I actually think the Big 12 is a lot more mediocre than people think. There's some good teams in it. Iowa State's been good. Texas Tech. There's plenty. Texas hasn't really been on the rise. There's plenty of teams that can beat you any given night.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a lot of teams in that conference that can beat elite teams any given night with that not on their home court. Which is where the NCAA tournament is played, is not on their home court. And I think the teams that have proven that they can do that, Houston's done that. They won a bunch of road games. Now, obviously, only Houston, UConn, and Purdue went undefeated at home this season, so that should tell you a lot about those teams. I know that's different. I'm not playing home games in the tournament either, but this is the fact that you guarantee basically a winning season at your home court says something when you're in a competitive, high-level, conference. So, Houston's very, very good. I think that's the moral of the story.
Yeah, for sure. Just running through these. Connecticut did win against Providence.
Yeah, the game started out rocky very early, and then they just went on a tear. And but like Providence, I don't think they're in the field. Some think they are. I don't think they are. I don't see it. I don't think Villanova's in it either. They got to put somebody in these places, but the thing about it is like the three teams we're talking about have been so much better than the other teams in their conference. Like those three teams, and even Tennessee in their own, they're not in a much closer race. But I think the top of the SEC is I think it's actually the best at the top of any league, the SEC, in my opinion. But going on to that, you have, but UConn is just too much for basically everybody in that league if they're playing nice basketball, especially at home. That game was on the road, but, anyways.
Yeah, and then Kentucky over Tennessee. That was a huge matchup, huge win for Kentucky. Despite
they continue to look like a team no one's going to want to play.
Yeah.
As a Purdue fan, I don't really want to see them in my region. I think right now they're moved up to more like a 3. So at least the good news there is I'd rather see them if they're going to be in a region, I'd rather see them as a 3. Because at least you're not playing them until the Elite 8 if they get that far and Purdue gets that far. A lot of ifs there. So, they could get knocked off before that, and then you don't have to even worry about it. But as a 4, you're playing them in the Sweet 16, and I think that would really be a difficult Sweet 16 matchup for anybody, even Purdue. And I just think that would be a shame to have 2 teams of that caliber playing in a Sweet 16 matchup. That would be pretty unfavorable number 1 overall draw.
Yeah.
As we think Purdue will be. Houston, I think perception is Houston's kind of making a little bit of a run on that, and possibly even Connecticut. Houston's going to get quality wins as they play, but I just think that, beating who they're going to beat, people are going to be like, oh, that team's so great, but Houston is just the best team in that league too, by a large margin,
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end of the day, you have to go back and look at these teams' non-conference resumes if you think whatever. And if they're going to get credit for beating Kansas a couple times and some of the, medium to above average teams like Iowa State or whatever, that's fine. Those are great teams. But if you just look at the gauntlet Purdue had non-conference, they had one of the best non-conference resumes ever.
Yeah.
Basketball history. It's unbelievable. We'll go on here. It looks like Iowa State lost at Kansas State. Kansas State, I don't think is even quite on the bubble at this point. I know I look like I jumped over.
Yeah, you jumped up a lot. I got this. Let's back up. Oh.
Yeah, here we go. I like this.
Arizona dropped one on the road to USC. That's a huge loss. Arizona.
My boy Josh, you've been telling me about USC for a few weeks as some of these players have been coming on, Bronny, and they've been playing better defensively. And look at them. They have been covering and either winning. They've won some nice games. They've been in all of them. Sometimes they've pissed away a lead. But they've been playing markedly better over their last 10 games.
Yeah, a team like that had high expectations and all the eyeballs on them at the beginning of the year, just because the talent that came in and their names.
And you see that every year in college basketball, mind you. There's a lot.
Yeah, but you don't see LeBron James's son, so this is completely a different level. So I think with this, it certainly. Everyone would have gave them a pass because they had so many injuries throughout the season, including, one of their 2, incoming freshmen that are likely going to be one and dones with all eyes on them. Certainly that's a spot where most teams just kind of pack up and get through the season. Players are going to the transfer portal. Who knows what happens? but to their credit, I think they're showing a lot of heart, and they're just turning into a team that nobody wants to play in the pack. And I just they're an interesting team for that tournament. And I don't know that it says much about Arizona. I think that they are elite in the backcourt for sure. It's just, I think that was a spot probably where everybody's just looking at USC's record, and that's just, at a point they're going to start understanding that they're just out trying to, do their best, because they're going to have to win their tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. So
that's not unprecedented in that tournament, though. I mean,
what?
They did it a few years ago, and they were like brutal. They went on a tear, and then started winning. They went to like the Elite Eight, I think.
Yeah,
the big dance, And so something kicked on there, and I highly doubt Oregon State had two players of the caliber that USC does.
Yeah, but it's not just those two players. I think that what made them interesting in all the way out there on the West Coast is obviously the two players are phenoms and elite talents, but they had some seniors and some portal kids come in. So they were trying to, expedite the process, and they had a plan going into the season. Just injuries kind of derailed that, but it's just an interesting team. If you see them, a huge spread. Let me see what the spread was against that. Against Arizona, I'm sure it was massive.
Probably wasn't as big as you think, because the game was at USC.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it was 7.5.
Yeah, that's about what I.
So, Vegas knows what's going on here. That would have been, I'm on USC, and I'm like, that's just with what Arizona is like. That can, 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing.
If that's
Arizona,
the number 5 team in the nation,
Arizona is very hard to trust.
Yeah,
and I think at this point, it's almost a certainty. I mean, I guess we can see what happens, but I know North Carolina's kind of battling for that spot now too. That I actually don't think Arizona will end up as the 1 seed over there unless they won the Pac-12. They're not going to get a lot of credit unless they beat the right team.
Yeah.
Still. But the one thing I will say is I think Tennessee at this point now has done enough to where I think they should be the number 4, 1 seed, the last,
Yeah.
And I think no matter what they do, I think they're going to stick Arizona out there in the West as a 2 seed. So it'd be like 2-1, 2-1, no matter how you want to look at it. I know North Carolina's in that mix. They basically got to beat Duke again to even, and then you start to water these things down. I know that Purdue's not playing Indiana, and it could have been playing Indiana, but if Purdue would have beat Indiana a 3rd time, now obviously Duke is way better than Indiana. But my point is, if we'd have swept them 3 times, no one even gives after you beat a team twice and it's your 3rd time, it's it's still Duke, North Carolina, so it's going to get that hype.
Yeah, the hype, but it's always an ultra competitive game. All those kids know each other.
Sure. But my point is, how much credit should you get for that?
I don't know. Not an easy spot to play.
No, it's not. But it's just my opinion, though. If Tennessee beats a couple teams in the SEC, is that more impressive than North Carolina winning the ACC championship? If Tennessee goes and they, beat. I don't see. I think we need to have a bracket in front of us. I could go look it up. I'm not going to right now. So we will be talking about that, but we'll pull up some brackets.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, obviously, the ACC is not the conference that the SEC or Big Ten, even I would argue, is.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's a unique game. I think that you have that environment either way. I think that it's impressive that if one of those teams, even if one of the teams is, and I think they're about as even as you can be. this year. But I mean, I've seen years where one team was down, and that's everything to them, and they split or sweep, having a down year. So
I think North Carolina is a little bit better than Duke.
Yeah, I would agree.
Just
I think that
like when I watched the two play individually, I actually watched this particular game. But I'm just saying, like, I think that Tennessee's going to have more chances to end up on that one line.
Sure.
I think that their non-conference resume is better as well, and so.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is North Carolina did go at Duke and pulled out a 5-point win.
Yeah.
So that's the context of that. But if you're a Duke or North Carolina fan, you got everything you wanted. But backing up one, Kansas State with a big, as you mentioned, a huge win against Iowa State. That's impressive.
Yeah. I would say it's not been a great road team. I mean, there's a lot of people that can say that, but
you're right.
They struggle at times offensively, and I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting. I don't think I'd be too beat up about it if they end up as a 2 seed in Purdue's region. At this point, it's about where they're projected. Things shake up quite a bit. We'll obviously know more in 6 days here, but that's a nice win for Kansas State. It kind of gets them in the position to be in position, let's say, but they'd have to win. They'd have to have something like a Houston. They'd have to have a pretty big win, I think, to get in the field.
I agree.
Without winning.
For sure.
And part of that is because the conference is watered down to where, if a team like Oklahoma, who's like a 9 or a 10, right now, if they just win a game, like how many does a team like Kansas State have to win to catch them? It's like 3 games. I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying? Like they're solidly in, one solidly out. You have to beat the people that you're actually battling with.
Yep.
And then you could do that in that conference, but
for sure.
Nice win for them, but those are the kind of things that are very predictable.
Yeah.
I really honestly I dropped the ball by not being more on USC. I tried taking the word from them. I keep an eye on them. And just because they're like down at the bottom of the list of like ESPN stuff, when I'm looking at some of these things, I just, but I actually, I would have loved them on those points, and they would have been like a live dog situation that I really delve into that more. And so it dropped the ball there. And ever since they've been really playing way better.
And I mean, I think that I did watch very small parts of that game on my phone while I was between my daughter's AAU games.
Yeah.
But, Bronny's had some just very average lines, but he's always showed up defensively, and it's kind of changed the complexion of that team in many regards, as far as being a point of attack defender and just a very good communicator, just the intangibles. And he's a great passer, just like his dad. That's just something that was passed along. So I think that when you bring an elite defender and someone that is a pass first player into the fold, that's just like Christmas, a late Christmas. But what I did notice is he got going early offensively, hit some step back threes, and just showed confidence. And you start adding in, what he can do offensively, being as dynamic and athletic as he is. And he's actually a very, very good shooter. He can create his own shot, unlimited range. I think that, that's how that happens. That's how you beat the number 5 team in the nation, as a team with a losing record.
Yeah. Well, so I think they are a team that could make that run. I don't think they will make that run.
I don't either.
I think there are some landmines in that conference, even though it's been, we're not really that highly regarded.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if there was a rematch in that game, I think Arizona wins it this year.
I'll tell you what though, they're kind of an afterthought because for 2/3 of the season they haven't had
healthy. Yeah, I know. I mean,
they haven't had Bronny. They haven't had the eyeballs that they thought they would on that program. But if they start winning a couple games in their conference tournament, there's going to be a lot of eyes and attention, media on that, and that'll be interesting to see how that responds. You heard it here first. If they make the tournament, they're probably winning it all. Don't put money on that though.
Don't do that at all. Absolutely. Will you be eating ramen for the rest of your life? If you do
no. They won't be making the tournament, but I wouldn't want to play them.
Yeah, no, and they're they might be. Let's look at some spreads, but there might be some great value on them. A couple rounds,
for sure. I'd have to look at
honestly,
it.
Honestly, you get probably a good number on them to win the thing. I just don't think that they will. I think that it'll be hard for them a couple of games into it, because they're playing early because of the record. They're you just get dead legs at a point, and I think it's very hard for them to beat some of the best teams in that conference. 3 games in with those legs to beat, what I'm saying, rather than a weak scout playing at home, a little bit different story. But yes, they would be a little sleeper pick for long odds, perhaps. And if they got in the tournament, they could be they could do some damage maybe, but I don't foresee that happening.
Looks like they get Washington at home next this week to end their regular season, and they had just played them 2 games ago. So
that should be tournament time now.
Oh, is it? Is that their tournament? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good. That wrapped up on Sunday.
That is their first round.
Yeah, that won't be easy. I mean, Washington's not.
No, I think Washington is favored here a bit. I don't think that they have the spread posted yet, but
when does that kick off?
This is
probably
Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah, that sounds about right. So they'd have to, grind through it, and I think by Friday that gets pretty tough against whoever.
Oh, for sure.
But it would be something to maybe long distance keep an eye on. But
you'll hear about it. You'll hear about it if they win a game or two.
Yeah,
because of who's on that
totally in the dark. Even through this run, they've been. No one said anything. I should have really. I listened to you, and I believed you, and then I saw the results right away. Like one game, I'm like, yeah, you might be onto something here, and so that caught my radar to where I sent out a few pics of them to people. We just didn't talk about it on the air. Shame on me.
Here's the thing. I don't have a ton of free time and extra time, but if I lock in on a player and I watch them play, then I can break that player down and I can pretty much predict how they're going to impact a game, or a team that they haven't been on. And they shouldn't be news flashes. It would be like me telling you that next year that was fun.
Next year something, I don't know. Maybe you didn't like that other thing going on there.
It did not.
A little Max Headroom check there for those that know. You know.
Now I know. Texas Tech did get a game against Baylor, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Once again, that's just how that conference is going.
Yeah.
Literally anyone but Houston. If they lose, it's just not a surprise. I mean, that's a good team. They're but the other night, they played Texas. Texas is actually a team that I think if they end up on that 8-9 line, they're going to be
they got a 4.
Then a lot of teams in that league. All equal.
You got a 14-point win against Oklahoma. Yeah, now that you mention it,
Oklahoma and Texas are basically on the same seed line. So if
you're,
Oklahoma to me is probably an early fade.
Yes,
you never know what happens, but I'm very comfortable if Oklahoma is the team Purdue plays.
Yeah. Let's see. Anything else stand out to you from?
There's a few other ones I saw just we had those things up. You had Marquette. They won at Xavier. That's no big surprise. The injury stuff. That's still a nice win.
So 6-point lead, 6.6-point game. Marquette over Xavier. That's at Xavier.
Yeah, no Kolek though. That's big time, man.
Yeah.
Cam Jones playing well. Kolek's
he had
a koozie list for point.
Cam Jones had 30.
He's a damn good player.
Creighton only a 2-point win at Villanova.
But Villanova was playing. I would have almost handed out Villanova in that game. They were 1.5-point favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Villanova was playing for the tournament lives. That was probably what punched their ticket. And now I just think they're now and now Villanova is a team because of their guard play.
Yeah.
If they get in the tournament, they would be a problem for some teams, especially where they're seated. I don't think they're gonna get in. We're speculating on some of these stuff because if you're that close to where you're in the bubble, someone's got to not either. Well, I mean, they'll be out of it right now.
Yeah.
It's almost like either them or Seton Hall gets in, right? And then Providence is right there. There's a scenario I don't think it's going to happen where it's 3 of the 4 teams Dayton are going to be Big East teams playing each other, you about to play yourself. Okay, now you get one more Big East tournament game, play each other. Here you go. What happened?
Yeah.
Maybe 2. I guess the other 2 are 16 teams, but you see what I'm saying? 4
For sure.
will be that level, and the other ones will be 16s, 4 will be 11s, and that's. So obviously, if you get the right win in your conference tournament, you're going to get in. But in that conference, you almost need to beat Creighton, Villanova plays Seton Hall. It's almost like the winner of the game gets in the tournament, and the other does not. And then they might not even they might be in a spot if they don't play each other. If they both lose their first games, they're both out. And so. If they win and if you beat Georgetown or DePaul, nobody gives a shit. But Georgetown gave one of the, I think it might have been somebody they played somebody and they gave somebody maybe it was St. John's for a minute. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was St. John's. Seton Hall
for a long time. Georgetown came out of the game, I believe, ahead for a while, and then St. John's finally got that lead and. I think took it out to where, but there was a point in that game. It's if you lose that game, you're done. You lose to Georgetown, St. John's ain't getting in. You cannot recover from that loss. So if you lose to DePaul or Georgetown or something like that, you're on the bubble. You're done. That's it. Doesn't matter if you beat somebody good before, which you wouldn't beat somebody good before that your first game, but you're done if that happens. And so those teams got to avoid a bad loss. And so their first game, if you beat one of those guys, it's it didn't even happen.
Yeah.
All it is just you didn't even matter. You got one more win. Nobody's going to care. You have to beat somebody.
Yeah.
And, so that'll be there's a lot of teams there that are, especially in that league, really right on the bubble. I think there's a few teams like that. Well, or maybe a couple. Well, I don't know. I think maybe more Mississippi State in the SEC. But anyways, any other things down the list so much?
Not really. Let's see. Going on to Sunday. Let's see. We had a pretty heavy Big Ten slate. That was what was really going on.
Nebraska had a nice win there.
Trying to see if there was anything outside of the Big Ten. Not really. Drake, Indiana State. Drake did win
That
by
was a
4.
fun basketball game to watch. I watched some of that like around the Purdue game, and I actually think both those teams. Obviously, Drake got in. I actually think both those teams are worthy to be in the NCAA tournament. Indiana State would be a nightmare for a lot of teams. I literally watched them on my couch. First game of the season, they're playing at Alabama. Probably could have gone to that game. And I'm like, I think in Indiana they were missing. I think Avia didn't play in that game. I mean, somebody like really good on their team was injured or couldn't make or something, And so if that guy plays, I can't remember what play, but they had one of their best players. They're not playing that game. And if he travels and plays in that game, they might beat Alabama first game, just kind of like James Madison won at Michigan State. And all of a sudden, that puts your season on a different trajectory altogether. You have that win, Indiana State's in the field without question. So, but you give them credit for playing. Most people don't like playing these teams, because what's your upside to playing these teams if you're a big team? If you lose, you just you make their season, and all it does is cost you a couple seeds, or maybe you don't even get in the tournament if that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
So I don't really see much there. Ohio State had a nice win. Or did they? Yeah, they beat Rutgers very handily. Ohio State did.
Yeah, they got them.
The coach, man, they've been on a tear. They're getting on the outside of the conversation too, where if they run through the bottom and then knock off a team or two, or beat like Nebraska, and then beat like an Illinois or something like that somehow, and emerge to the championship game on Sunday. A lot of times by then, a lot of people don't understand these conference tournaments for the big teams, unless it's just to get you into the field. It doesn't really do a whole lot. It doesn't really change your seed much. There's been times where you think, this team should be on this seed, go up a whole seed by winning their conference tournament. They got a lot of that stuff figured out by Thursday, Friday. They scrub it to where they'll go through and might reseed you based on something if you've really done something impressive.
Yeah.
Or obviously, if you win it, they have to have a contingency plan. If you weren't in the field to put you in the field, then that's a problem. But if you're playing these things and like someone but you do get these spots where maybe like an Ohio State or like an Iowa, you get a few more wins, then you get to the spot. Now I know Ohio State's further behind Iowa by some metrics. That it's surprising because they've beaten Purdue, Michigan State, and Alabama. So that's it's 3 better wins than a lot of people can say, clearly. And then plus you have a coaching change, so you can almost look at it as how are they playing now? And people look at that, So I still think they'd have some work to do, but if they go down that bottom of that bracket and they beat win their first game, especially a team that's on the bubble, let's say we'll look at a bracket later, but you go down and then you knock off Nebraska to get to an Illinois if they make it, something like that. It's you do that, and all of a sudden you might be taking someone's bid,
Yeah.
But we shall see the teams really rise to the top here. It's always interesting with these smaller conference tournaments to see who comes out of what, because a lot of times there's that darling or a team that's really done very well. I know, I feel like Appalachian State had a phenomenal season. Maybe 20. They have a bunch of wins. And I think they lost in their tournament. And obviously, at that point, it's you watch them play, they're really good. That's probably some of these tournaments. You just got to win your tournament unless you've done something in the non-conference. And that's the ups and downs of March, unfortunately. But.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into what everybody's here for.
Right.
Purdue with a big win. Why don't you start breaking it down? I'm going to pull up a box score.
Yeah.
I know that you already touched on some of your feelings on the officiating. I don't know that matters to everyone as much as what you saw from Purdue and what it means to them going forward, going into the Big Ten tournament and ultimately the.
Well, much like it has been all season for the last few years, and clearly this year, and Michigan State did the same thing.
Mhm.
People have come. People look at beating Purdue, and they have now for the last handful of seasons. Certainly as like it's such a signature win that you get everybody's best effort. You can say that. I mean, UConn sees it now. Houston sees it. The Kansas, the Dukes, the North Carolinas.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen it for decades now. Kentucky, you're getting everybody's best shot every time because anytime you can associate your program with someone that's beat a named program, it's a huge deal. And it's especially a huge deal when these teams are ranked in the top 5. Especially a huge deal when they're playing at their home because it's kind of like a situation where Wisconsin's really faded down the stretch. And it's really a reset, much like the Big Ten tournament or whatever conference tournament you're a fan of, or an NCAA tournament. These are resets for these teams, and they look at it as the last day, senior day. And I saw the most inspired Wisconsin team play. Now they were playing very, very physical, very I think dirty. That is a little bit of their MO. At times this season they've been a little listless, so they really do. I think the problem now is like with Zach Edey especially is you need to do something to just throw Purdue off, whether that really be physical with every player and then especially other players, not including Edey. But they were just doing lots of very physical, overly physical play. And the dude is a giant. So like you kind of you do what you can do. I mean? Like it's really he's like a unicorn, like we've been saying all year long. There's nothing quite like him. Foul him, didn't expect the free throw line. He fouls your dudes out. He was in the process of doing that with many people there. Helps you get to the bonus. It's a massive advantage. He's an excellent rebounder, but he's a better rebounder outside of his zone than he gets credit for. And he affects things on the defensive end as far as shots. So if you're a driver, you see it happen all the time. As soon as if he gets in foul trouble, or as soon as he's out of the game for a subbing, people take the rack against Purdue, and they have pretty decent success when he's not back there as that safety net. And that's a huge. I mean, for that alone, he should be on the ranks of defensive player of the year, or certainly in that conversation. In addition to how good he is, because it's what you can't do when he's in that makes him a problem.
Yeah.
And so, and he just works at it tirelessly, and he gets, as big as he is, he gets displaced at times, and people try all kinds of like sneaky, Wisconsin's doing that for years, where they do they do all the, they know all the moves of the old man knees and elbow, 40 and over league. They know them all. They've been doing it for decades now, and they really, they do some like really, I think, cheap stuff. But with that being said, what are you supposed to do with Zach Edey anyways? Like, obviously everything else you're trying to do is not going to work. So what will they call? But I just hate seeing some things where you got a hook and high hold, you got someone else staggered low. There's a very scary moment there where he twisted his ankle because he landed on someone like kind of trying to cut through. He got a terrible pick called where the guy like just ran into him. He was totally set, and just because he just exploded off of him, they called Edey for the foul because the optics looked bad, but it was a horseshit terrible call. And that was his like first foul, I think, might have been his second, but it was a very bad call. And then he didn't get the other two he got out of his first 3 were both deserving, but he had to sit on the bench for a minute, So now he's in foul trouble in the first half. And and he injured his ankle briefly, came back in, so he was out a little bit of a spell there. Not a whole long time, but a handful of minutes in the foul trouble situation. Then Braden Smith towards the end of the half injures his ankle, comes back in at the very end gingerly, and we're all like freaking out with Purdue's injury history. It's like, kill us all. Like Hummel twice, Glenn Robinson's back, against Duke. Would have probably won the whole thing that year had they not been roughhousing and what have you in the hotels, the rumors, more than rumors, but whatever. Before in their Elite Eight game, before they played Duke and all those All-Americans they had. So that was like the first of a swath of lots of injuries that way. I know a couple years later, this will bring him an old name, Jerron Cornell turned his ankle really bad. Just was never the same after that. Purdue was lighting it up that year. They were, on a tear to make some noise. I think they might have won the Sweet 16, but maybe they lost in the Elite Eight. I can't remember, but that was just a big loss. When he was never right after that. Obviously, Robbie Hummel 2 times. That was one of the best Purdue teams. 08, 09, 10, those 9, 10 teams that, Purdue, I think, was 3rd in the country, winning at Minneapolis, tore his ACL, had a whole year off, came back. That was his junior year. Senior year comes back, and during August practice, re-tears that same ACL. Purdue had a very good season that year, but you're talking about a prolific NBA level NBA dude. But and so those were 2 catastrophic injuries, same player, unfortunately. And so Robbie's doing the telecast, and it's funny because his partner mentioned it, but it's almost like, should I mention it? Should I not mention it? Mentions like a whole sigh of relief because the whole place in Mackey silent, thinking really, there's a lot. I don't think you lose anybody when you're trying to win a national championship. You can't lose Braden Smith, and you can't lose Zach Edey. Either one. You lose either one of those players. Purdue's season is completely compromised. The whole season's been based off of what they do. It would be just a bad situation. You'd have to have COVID just to Michael Jordan type tough, which whatever. But you just never would. There's just no way you could ever replace those 2 players. Probably not ever. They're that good. And that'll happen in a 5-minute span. So that was the fact that we're just both healthy. You're like, holy, thank God. How many seasons, the Isaac Haas elbow or in the sweet, first round tournament game, we're blowing out Cal State Fullerton. The guy yanks him down. Isaac Haas shatters his elbow. We had a big enough lead in that game. We won that game. Obviously, you played Butler the next game, get the Sweet 16, played Texas Tech. Our biggest advantage was having Isaac Haas. Now, Texas Tech was not very tall, so you had Isaac Haas, which they couldn't have guarded him. And then they were able to play, 3, 4 out, 5 out. And then without Isaac Haas, who your whole season you've been getting the ball inside, you got 5 days to come up with a new strategy of how you want to beat teams. And that was a huge weapon because he, much like Zach Edey, he's like Zach Edey, 0.0. Where he got you in foul trouble too. The difference was, Edey really makes you pay at the line a little bit more than Haas did, but still same concept. Couldn't guard him. Big problem. So all these injuries have not really helped Purdue's cause of making a Final Four, the first Final Four, going back to 1980, so 44 years now. But once again, so Purdue, I think, was relieved to be up at half. Obviously, I don't think as much as, what was the halftime score? 44 to 30. Was it 33? Yeah, we were up 11. So
44-33.
Really should have been up more than that. Probably should have already had the knockout punch. But when you lose those 2 people for a decent amount of time there because of their injuries, I think these don't happen. Purdue's up 5, 6, 7 more points, and then they win this game going away. And Wisconsin just kind of kept on hanging around. AJ Storr had a massive day. He played for a year. All their, they looked very intent defensively. I think I'm trying to think of the point guard for Wisconsin right now. It's fine, my bad.
I got you.
Anyways, he really did a good job defensively on Braden Smith. Braden Smith was still able to facilitate and get some points, but Warrior, another big game. Gosh, what's his name? Hepburn. Chucky Hepburn. I could possibly forget. He really, really showed up defensively to really kind of disrupt some things and got up in Braden Smith's grill. Smith just makes it. We had some turnovers in the first half. We actually had a lot of turnovers for us to actually beat a team like Wisconsin. A little bit more than the turnover you want, but I feel like we out-rebounded them. I know, let's see, is that Crowell? He had a pretty good game, too, did he not? I mean, that's
he did not.
He had a bad game. Who's it? Somebody like Tyler Wall, I think, played a pretty good
game. Yeah, Wall had 17 team rebounds, 5 assists. So
I'm reading it wrong and just remembering who played. I was like, Wall had a really good game. They're like,
yeah.
But anyways.
And it looks like Blackwell off the bench.
Blackwell played like Blackwell balled out of his mind. He hit some threes, some tough ones. Really got going, got his head up, and we were not able to shut the water off on him until really. I mean, he had a pretty good game, and once again when Edey went out, they went and attacked the rim and got some baskets they wouldn't normally get. Some of that was foul, some of that injury. So it's like, honestly. If Purdue plays Wisconsin another rematch, they'll win the game more than likely, even more so than they won this game. All things cool. Because so I think Wisconsin played pretty well. I don't even think Purdue played all that great for them. There were some extenuating circumstances. You had senior day, so it's an emotional day. Lance Jones seems to have he had some daggers. Gillis had some daggers. Even Caleb First hits one from the corner. He can shoot threes. He never hardly does it. He got to play a decent amount and without Edey being in there. And he's a productive player. So I think an encouraging sign is Colvin got some run for the first time in, I think, 3 games of, DNPs.
Yeah.
He didn't, his box score stuff wasn't like
6 minutes.
But he played good defense actually.
Yep.
And
2 steals and a foul.
Yeah, I mean, he had a foul immediately right away. They called a foul. He
That's all right.
Foul because it was Store went right at him, or somebody it's like someone right at him, one of those cheapies. And once again, that's how the game was. It was very contested even on both sides.
Yeah,
I really hate talking about the officiating a lot, which I feel like I have done a decent amount, and I don't really like that. And I think it's like a pandemic almost.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is
sports, but if a hand check foul is a foul on one end, it should be that same thing in the first half as the second half. It should also be the same thing on either end of the court.
I think that the silver lining though is Purdue's 28-3. And yeah, we talk about officiating. Everybody talks about it with their team.
Yeah.
I mean, you had just as many people complaining on the Wisconsin side.
Oh yeah.
So it comes with the territory as far as, you think your team is not getting the whistle, the correct side of it. But I think that of anyone, Purdue does have a legitimate gripe every single game because of the parts that we have. But the thing about it is yeah, we're not, maybe it costs them from covering, which is important to some people, but being 28-3 and having to overcome a lot of the officiating, it shows resolve. And I try to look at everything from the perspective of how does this translate to the postseason. And I would not want Purdue to have, the correct whistle against Wisconsin, and they beat them by 24.
Yeah.
As much as I'd rather them be used to this is kind of par for the course, and let's find a way to overcome it and stay the course, in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it only helps them against a team if they end up playing.
Exactly. It certainly has helped them. It probably has kept them a lot more disciplined and just ready for just about anything. And
and some of these metrics, like the net, like whatever, I think a lot of the stuff needs to be tweaked in general. Should they take like a a conglomerate of these things? But that's like one of the highest things that they use. And that is affected by like how bad you beat people in these games. And so that's why like UConn has some numbers that are really inflated. Houston does, they've had some where they just beat, on even they weren't good teams like that. And obviously they're very good enough to do that. It's really not Matt Painter doesn't try and do that, first of all, which is fine. I mean, it is what it is. Some teams actually go out of the way to do that. And honestly, it's funny. You see it happen at the end, and that's maybe why Greg Gard didn't call off the Dogs. Like, I think there's some spot where, like, if you win by like 6, 7, 8, like 8 points, or the 10 range to like above that, like might be 8 or above. It's like it counts like worse for you than, or better, looks better for you than getting. You know what I'm saying? Like if you lose by like 6 or 8, 7, something like that, it's like considered a close loss. And there's a cutoff line. It might be 7, it might be 8. And you saw Michigan State at the end. They had a situation like that where they ended up like playing really hard at the very end, whatever, got it to like 7, or whatever. I can't remember what they won by, but it was literally, I saw some comment somewhere where it was just under the cutoff to where it looked like a bad, like it hurt in the net metric, if that makes any sense. I know that's weird, but it's like, it's funny, but they're a team that they're really depending on like how that looks. So, but other teams across the board, and obviously if you're good enough just to do that and beat them however you do it, you should do it, and Purdue had massive wins like that early in the year against good teams, but he would rather like play some other people and do some of this, and he just doesn't get really caught up in that. And, I don't think that's a really good metric. I think like who you play, when you play, where you play them, that should matter. I think if you get any of the top 10 teams in the country and they just want to beat the crap out of you and you're not good, they'll do it. But what if you gain from that? Because, karma's a bitch. Like, you have like a down year. Well, guess who's, look at how many, I'm sure Michigan a couple years ago beat the hell out of some teams. Well, when that roulette wheel spins around and it's your turn up, it's like, guess who's going to try and leave a mark? So it's like, it's never a good idea to run up some of these scores like some of these people. Because when it's your turn, like, for example, a couple of years ago, Kansas just beat the crap out of, it's more than a couple, but, 6, 7, 8 years, I don't know, like years ago, played Kansas in Kansas City, in the Sweet 16. And they just blew our doors off. And, it's a home crowd. They travel well anyways. There's a home crowd for them, basically 45 minutes from home, hour from home, something like that. They just stuck it to us. Now, I didn't know they were really trying to run up the score, but they were like showboating. Like, it was just one of those things where they jumped out early. It was inevitable. Like, we were just overwhelmed, and they just, really made us look bad. Well, that's kind of why I hope we play Kansas, because that happens this year. Like, when that table flips, we're going to pour salt in that wound and put a stick in it. We are going to try and throttle them just because of that. Painter was the coach of that team, obviously. So not in his nature, but he might get some licks in for some stuff like that. So anyways, I mean, who knows? Maybe you won't, but you wouldn't mind it, But
yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, I enjoy your referee takes.
I think for me the hardest thing to watch is just egregious misses, like egregious.
Not so much that. I like I like your interaction. This was my personal favorite. I didn't really know what was going on. We'll see here. Let's see. Chris Davis says this is a very critical moment in the game. Watch Edey run over Chucky, and you know why people say what they do about how he's officiated. Would have been his fourth foul, plus take the 3 off the board, and you can see what transpires there, and you reply, "I hope he broke his nose." Wisconsin is dirty, dirty trash.
Yeah,
That's just good, clean fun.
that is good clean living. So not on that play, but later he takes a shot. He has like a visible mark where you clearly see Edey like slight down on him. But anybody can just take sample sizes,
Sure.
whatever, when they want to like make that their call. But I can show you 5 times where Store or like somebody was driving to the hoop, Blackwell, full extension of arm, shoving somebody when a lawyer happens a lawyer a lot, to anybody flying, like a Lance Jones or somebody else out of the way, full extension of the arm. Ethan Morton, and he's not tiny by any means, doing that. And, if you go, like if you displace somebody with an arm bar driving to the basket, that's always an offensive foul.
Yeah.
Moving, not moving, whatever. And it's an egregious offensive foul. And when you call that a blocking foul, we need to see your bank account. Like you just, you've done something that's bullshit. I mean, there's something, there's somebody knows something we don't know. And I feel like what they need to do to make refs accountable is they go to the press conference after the teams do, and the reporter's going to ask them questions like, "What did you think of that one call where, the guy is clearly at half, like where Mr. Green, can you defend yourself in Mackey with the whistle at half court, calling a goaltending call? I don't feel like that's your call. And they go stop the play to look at a review for a goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in that play. Like people that make like foul calls from 45 feet away, that's ridiculous.
It happens on every level. It happens on every level, every game.
It does, and usually there's one dominant ref, and then like they all buy into whatever he has to say. So then they look after each other. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think what you typically see a lot though is I don't think for the most part a ref, I think that they get caught anticipating calls, and that's probably what it is. And they, and when you anticipate, you obviously feel strongly about what you saw or didn't see in your mind, like in a split second. It's very tough, but you kind of double down if you're anticipating calls. You kind of double down on that. And then what ends up happening in a lot of cases when I'm watching games in high school, college, and definitely in the pros is you will almost always see a makeup call.
Oh, yeah. That's
depending on who I will agree with you that they kind of follow one person in the crew, that there's a dominant person in the crew. Where you don't see makeup calls is typically the lead ref, where he's just I don't know if it's ego or what, but you don't see that as much. But I don't know. It's as long as there's human beings reffing games, there's going to be issues like that. But I think what's more interesting, I wouldn't change it for the world, because I think it really does. It epitomizes what sports is about to me, is how you respond to it, Yeah. And I think that if you have the goods, it in most cases it's not going to matter. But yeah, you'd like to see perfectly ref games, and you'd like to see, but I think it's what makes it entertaining
Yeah.
for sure. And I think the bigger picture is that Purdue always seems to find a way to overcome it. They don't, and I don't think they did that as much last year. I think that they were affected in spots quite a bit last year, and I think that there was a lot more complaining in spots last year. So I think, I really think they've taken everything that they possibly can. I think that, all aspects of their game, what they can control, what they can't control. I think that they're in a spot where they've fine-tuned everything.
The maturity level where they get in these spots, or they've been tested like this, to where even you saw them talking like lawyer or whatever, like after the game, like they never thought for 1 second they'd lose the game. They're down 2 points in that game.
No.
And that right there is maturity, like where because when you can get in these situations and then you win the game still, boy, that just breeds like big time confidence for later environment, something else, something really on the line. And one thing I'll say, Purdue never panics.
No.
Never. And I when I've watched Houston do it, I don't see them panic.
No.
I'd say mostly Connecticut. I saw them panic when they played Marquette, or when they played at Creighton, they were way out of sorts. I saw that a little bit when Purdue played at Nebraska, but they were just hitting. It's just they're not hitting everything.
Not different than UConn though. I mean, they just didn't show up, and they were a fucking mess. I mean, Nebraska just shot the lights out, and I think that I don't know that Purdue expected that.
Yeah, I think they knew that was certainly possible, but it was almost like that was kind of their wake up call. Like, you can't play this level of deep. You can't. You know what I'm saying? You can't just roll out there because you're this X amount good.
Yeah.
So the year before they won out there in overtime. And so now you can be, like you get yourself in a spot where, okay, well, we still won the game. And it would have almost been more served had they not won the game, because they couldn't draw from not winning the game like they did. You see that from that moment, that catapulted the rest of the season, where it's overtime. They have an overtime loss at Northwestern, and then a freaky situation where they replaced the coach at Ohio State, who's playing phenomenal, good players, mind you, very good players. And they changed that culture overnight. And if Purdue played Ohio State 2 weeks earlier, they win that game. They have 2 losses, and people are like, Purdue's the best team in the country, and it's not close. And they've got 1 less loss. I mean, that would be it, because people would be like, oh, they have 1 overtime loss and 1 other loss, and that's it.
Yeah.
What can you say? You couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
And, going further back to like Purdue, this isn't not only the winningest class in Purdue history, this is the winningest 4-year class in Big Ten history right now. And that's going Big Ten history. No 4-year team has won more games than Purdue in Big Ten history. Now that is crazy. I mean, that is a hell of an accomplishment. And that's before the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. So you might stack on some. Honestly, you're going to get to the point where, Smith and Lawyer, that class, Kaufman, Wren, they got a chance to certainly beat it, because they're half these wins already. And then, if they can carry on, even similar results to what you're getting, very possible, clearly, without the pipeline, of course. But, very encourage you win a game like that. I don't think Wisconsin could hardly play much better. They really wanted to go win the game. But I think my biggest thing is finishing up with the whole officiating thing. I would just like to see consistent calls. Consistent. It's not, if you're calling things you letting them play, let them play. If you're, calling hand checks, you got to call hand checks. And you also can't, so I think that's the biggest problem. That's, and that's like I said, that's an epidemic going around everywhere, not just all around, like several levels of sports, and, certainly level one right now. So it's something that, yes, the great teams find a way to win, not the end of the world. But I do think it's silly when you get people like complaining about the officiating. It's like you can go like show you 10 different things here. You know what I'm saying? So it's fine. I'd like to see a foul call on one end and then do the same thing on the other. And when Courtney Green is in your building and you are the underdog, if you have any amount of set aside cash, you should put all of it on the underdog to cover and some to win. Sprinkle money line sprinkles, I like to say a little bit, maybe half. I don't know, half unit. Who knows? But
yeah, it's a big win. It sucks they didn't cover, I guess, but I mean, Wisconsin at one point in the season certainly was no pushover. So I think it's cool from that standpoint where you as a team continue to ascend, and it kind of turns into this kind of team beating a Wisconsin team like this as a foregone conclusion is pretty cool to see as far as growth. So
100%.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that Wisconsin is not the team, obviously, they were earlier in the season, and just beating them, like you said, was never in doubt. And I think that just shows kind of the two different trajectories of the teams. It really was a foregone conclusion that Purdue was going to win that game. It was just a matter of how much. And that's a surprising statement if you talked about that around Christmas time. So I think it's just it's a positive sign overall. And it's the kind of thing, honestly, that what I kept thinking about is not so much Wisconsin, but Wisconsin, the name brand, and having big time recruits in the building like Jalen Harrelson against that, and on senior day, and thousands of people still in the stands an hour after the game. Like if he was around for that, that makes a huge impact. So I think that it was a pretty good day Sunday for many reasons.
Absolutely. If I say I like to watch the senior day thing, the last 2 years you can watch it like on YouTube, home of the awesome franchise and J-Lo podcast, by the way. But you can watch that like YouTube live, like afterwards. You can find someone that's got it from Purdue. Maybe Brags in the Stand, another really good podcast. Somebody puts it up there. But it's cool because obviously you can't make it back home. In my case, long trip, game I really wanted to go see. But I just kind of, with me going back there next week, this wasn't, 8 days, 7 days, whatever wasn't going to work out. So, game I really want to be there in person, check it out, watch them. They already won the Big Ten, but at the time I wanted to get the tickets. I was like, they're going to win the Big Ten outright on that day, which they already, they did theoretically, but they already had that done the day before or game before. But awesome to see, the sellout at Mackey stay hour and a half after the game, and then throngs of those people staying because Zach Edey came out. He was out 3 hours after the game. He was out still doing autographs and getting selfies with grandpas with people, and whoever, like kids, everything, autographs. He never leaves. I think it's really cool, someone of that caliber to continuously do that. And he's done it in the last 2 seasons at home. And obviously seeing his jersey, they don't really retire jerseys at Purdue, but his jersey hung from the rafters as a live player. They've never done that before, as far as I know. They've not done it since I've been watching them hang jerseys, Before that, maybe they did it, but usually that thing's done after when you come back, like next season or something, and they bring you back for a game. But they're doing it while he, after the speeches,
Mm-hmm.
But it's just one of those things where obviously Mackey's a very special place. It was awesome for anyone that got to attend that game. and witness that. And I'm really glad that people do put that online so I can watch it from home. And just hearing Lance's story and Mason Gillis, it's going to be a really special class. Obviously, as I stated before, the winningest 4-year class in Big Ten history, let alone Purdue history, in Big Ten history, the winningest 4-year class. And that's with maybe 3 games in the Big Ten tournament and, maybe hopefully 6 more games in the NCAA tournament. So several games to add to that to where it's going to be pretty hard to catch for somebody else unless they do really, really, really well and go really far. Or somehow we go to 35 game regular season schedules. You never know. But outside of that, excellent run. Jaden Ivey, part of that senior class too. 2 years removed, NBA talent extraordinaire, hell of a player there. So, but it was good to see Purdue find a way to battle adversity, get Wisconsin's best shot, and really still win going away, despite some redonkusaurus antics by certain players. But anyways, great win. If anybody didn't get to see Matt Painter's press conference, it was epic. He was like, after the game, obviously a lot of saluting to like Zach Edey and others and what the seniors did, especially on senior day, thanking all the fans, like all the players did as well. But it was huge. I thought it was very funny that, he was talking about building a program and like, one of the hardest things to do is like hold people accountable and tell them like no, and even they don't want to hear it or whatever, grooming these guys to become like, grown men more or less in the 4 or 5 years that they're there, or they really build character. Mason Gillis had it, an incident a few years back, and a lot of those, not necessarily like a huge incident, but big enough that, you might get kicked off a team, you might, and so I just think it's incredible that, Painter really sticks by guys. There's been situations like that in the past, and he always gives somebody at least one chance, sometimes the second one, but always like sees them through, because developing these guys as great human beings and great ambassadors of Purdue University is his like first, his most important accomplishment that he does. And I thought it was incredible where he's like, yeah, if you just told people these, everybody yes and whatever else, or you didn't have rules and you didn't want to build a culture, it's like if someone didn't, Gene Katie didn't do that with me, I would be in a, if you let people just run amok and do what they want as 18 to 23, 22 year olds, and like, hey, you can do this, do that, and don't build that culture. He's like, he was like, I would be in a bowling league on Tuesday night in Muncie, Indiana still, and I'd be a hell of a slow pitch softball player as well. Like, he was like, because when it got hard, my parents and my coaches held me accountable to do, to really stick through the tough times, and just grind it out. And I think just seeing these people go on to have successful careers, even after basketball is long done, when they go back, he's like, you can go back and say, well, this team did this, whatever. Like, well, they can never take it out of the program, like what your record was, and they go back and show your wins, and you go back and say, well, I was part of this Big Ten championship team in this class. That's the winningest class in Big Ten history, certainly Purdue history at this time. I'm just going to add to that. And I think it's a testament to how great of a human being he is, as well as a great coach he is. And, clearly players see that because he's very honest and he's forthright and he's very funny. And, they have an excellent staff there. And so it's just like great to see the people stick around to witness that awesome senior day, and just in 1 year, how quickly like Lance Jones brought into the culture. And, just, that's just the kind of Purdue puts out good humans and not just excellent basketball players. And so it was great to see Matt Painter do that. I know they're coming out with the Big Ten awards. If the Big Ten Coach of the Year goes to anybody other than Matt Painter, just like last year went to Chris Collins, it's great. Like they made their second national tournament ever. They're both under Chris Collins. Purdue won the Big Ten by 3 games. I just how do you not win Coach of the Year when you win the Big Ten by 3 games? That's fine. Didn't do it. If it happens again where he wins the Big Ten once again by 3 games, and he's not named like at least Big Ten co-coach of the year, then you should just get rid of the whole system. And I know it's like Fred Hoiberg's up there because they've done so well. And my point is like coming back from what Purdue had to do after their embarrassing loss against Farley Dickinson and all the adversity they felt in playing the schedule that Purdue played to go undefeated 3 years running, but certainly this year, winning the Maui, going 17-3, having the best record in Big Ten, basketball. Really, well, I mean, as far as like the number of wins in a Big Ten season for Purdue, 17-3, not losing at home, it's absolutely incredible if you look at what Matt Painter has done with his team. He wisely just gets one portal player that's a perfect fit for Purdue, exactly what they needed, and he's built a culture. Like I don't understand, how he does not. He gets credit for that, but my point is like, if winning is winning should be a pretty big factor in Coach of the Year, and if you've won, I don't have to look at the record right now. I'm sure. I don't have the record up here, but I'm sure I can find it really quick. I don't know how many more games, Purdue won than Nebraska, but it's a lot. And I know that they did beat us heads up, but I mean, you're talking about go give Nebraska a Purdue schedule, and they're not even into the tournament team because they have too many losses against the teams that would help them get in. And, they'd be replacing, Florida A&M with Marquette, and they're going to lose. So, it's just one of those things where if he does not win, and honestly, if Braden Smith and Edey are not first team All Big Ten, it's broken too. You know what I mean? It's just it should be about winning. And so, I mean, obviously, what Hoiberg and Collins and some of these coaches, Ben Johnson, he kind of faded recently. Brad Underwood, he's had to get, but I don't really. I mean, DeBoer of Ohio State only did it for X amount of games, but if they throw some BS curveball like that out there, and it's not Matt Painter, it's just quit doing the award. So that's just my extra thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm.
I just that should be rewarded and awarded, and then doing it the right way. It's just going about it and being a great ambassador for basketball too should be icing on the cake to those things. But he went nearly, I think Dan Hurley's. I mean, they might have announced that he probably won Big East Coach of the Year, won his league by 3 or 4 games. Kelvin Sampson gonna win the Big 12 first year in there. He deserves it, but something a little in common. See something in common here. Teams just win all their games basically. I just, so I hear a lot of national Coach of the Year things, and I'm like, I can see you giving it to Kelvin Sampson. Everybody's like, well, Hurley lost, all these players, and they're back at it and even better. And well, they are certainly to a degree, but they still return some damn good players. I mean, obviously Purdue returned all their players more or less, but it's still UConn won the whole national. They won the whole thing. So you've already got this pedigree of we can do this again, not like this stipulation hanging over their head all year. where you have to constantly go and prove yourself. Like UConn didn't have to go out and prove anything this year. Purdue's had to like prove it every single game. Hell, when they lose a game in overtime, people are like, "Oh, this team's showing signs of weakness." I mean, they've had to answer that every single they've lost 3 times, but they've had to answer that when they've lost close games. Or even like I saw people like before the Illinois game be like, "I'm all in on Illinois." Even after they beat them, it's like, well, I think people were still like, well, I think Illinois is still the biggest threat in the Big Ten tournament. And it's like, well, yeah, they are the biggest threat in the Big Ten tournament because they're the only team that can probably hang with Purdue, if they don't even play their best game. But, on the other side of that coin is I don't understand how you come away with that in a situation where it's like Illinois is obviously very good, and I guess you're just saying biggest threat. But if you're like, well, they only lost by like they didn't really close out the game very well. They're like Illinois didn't play well. It's like you ever consider they didn't play well because we played good defense, and like we were down in the game, and it's like we came and we're playing on the road at their home. Like, why is it like where Purdue has issues when they beat somebody on the road in what was circa the Super Bowl? But then, UConn goes get slaughtered twice on the road, and it's like, well, Creighton's a really good team. Well, shit, we're all good teams to get 18 threes. Hell, I mean, no one. It's like they got obliterated twice. One of them's not even a tournament team, in my opinion. I guess they're in right now, but they're all right. But Creighton's very good. It's a tough place to play. And Marquette. If they had the players, they were missing 2 players. They had their players that had beat them too. In my opinion, we would have said that. But like, you're like Kolick, you're like Iguodala, you're not gonna beat UConn. But they still battle them like hell. But I just, I don't. It's funny. Like there's still people that are like, man, just like a very small fraction are like, man, I think Illinois is like better than Purdue. Still, I'm like. Really? I mean, I don't know. So, I guess you're saying biggest threat, sure, because that was their point. But I was like, I don't. If you're shooting it because we barely won at Illinois, and then we only beat them by 5 at our place. I'm like, we were beating them their ass at our place, and then they had Terrence Shannon, everybody and their son, and we're playing at their home. You're never gonna get, there's a situation where it's like. People were like, well, there's a favorable. They were talking about like being in Minnesota was going to be a more favorable environment than playing at State Farm or Center. I'm like, yeah, don't really see that so much. But anyways,
exactly. Well, it'll be interesting. We'll see. I think that it'll start. Being a lot clearer. I don't know. I don't know how hard. I know it's on their checklist of goals is the Big Ten tournament championship, but I think that they're a bigger goal that maybe be it not so defined by numbers or wins or losses is that they stay healthy. I'm sure that that's front of mind for them. So, I mean, I'm not going to take a ton away from the tournament. I think that the biggest thing, I think they've shown everything that they need to show throughout the season. Even if there was a loss, it's not ideal, but I think that it's more important that they're healthy. But yeah, they're definitely rolling for sure. I think it's easy to overlook how really hot they are as a team right now. Illinois, Michigan State, Wisconsin, like those are not easy. It's not an easy way to finish your conference. I mean, especially with the bullseye on your back every game, and It's just I think they're in a good spot right now, and I think that what has to be the number one priority is health. So, that's
and I think they are gonna take this seriously.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're just going to not play anybody, but
there is a tiny one, just how it like unfolds, that Purdue wouldn't, like, if they were to lose the first round. So there's two things. I don't even know if Purdue players even know this, but I'm almost certain that no one has ever won the NCAA championship if they've lost the first round of their conference tournament. I don't think it's ever happened. I'm almost positive I've heard that stat over the years. I don't think that's. Obviously, in some cases, you don't get in the tournament if you don't win the conference championship. So, like, those two were all eliminated. Obviously, you're a smaller conference. But I think and it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be either Minnesota or Michigan State. So you might go pretty much one game ago, played Michigan State. You're a couple games ago, I guess. You're right back at it, possibly, or Minnesota both, have pros on their team, so good team. But you get in a situation where, Purdue doesn't play till Friday morning, first one out of the gate for them as far as the double buys. And I do think, so if they win, obviously if you go to Sunday and you're in the Big Ten championship game and you win it, or even if you don't, you played Sunday, Purdue's not playing until Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to get, once again, it's like playing Sunday, Friday. They're almost already on NCAA tournament schedule right now. Like Sunday, Friday, that's where they're at now. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of used to that duration of time. Clearly with the scares, you want to make sure that you stay healthy. They don't want to do like crazy crap to win some of these games. But I think it's important that you show up and you play well. And the thing about it is, like, if you're getting 85 to 90% level Purdue, you should still win the Big Ten tournament. Really. And that's if you end up having to play the best of the best that's out there in the Big Ten. And, so personally, I think it's one of their goals. I think they all know that they're measured what happens in March. I think they got their eye on that prize. I don't think they're really going to lack focus in the Big Ten tournament. I do think that clearly the NCAA tournament is their focus. Mm-hmm. So I think they kind of want to hurry up and get there. But why not pick up 3 wins, one more, banner up in Mackey Arena, and in the process? Because I think if Purdue wins even like a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament, I don't think anyone can unseat them from the number 1 overall seed. But if they win the tournament, there's no way that UConn, no one could get you. And I know that the number 1 overall doesn't matter as far as where you're going to get placed in your region in your first, 2-round games, and then, Sweet 16, your second weekend games. Those will be in the same venues for all 3 of those teams. Mm-hmm. But the difference is, who are they going to probably put you up against? If you're the number 1 overall, they try and give that team a more favorable draw as far as like some of the heavy hitters. Everybody's got, you're going to have tough games into a tournament. It's not like, clearly the first game for some people, if you're a number 1 seed, but like that 8-9 game, if you're a number 1 seed, is always very tough. Not all, but like those teams can beat you and knock you out of the tournament, depending on who it is. But it's really like more like your 3s and your 4s and your 2s, or maybe the 5 seed or whatever. Someone like you're going to be playing early enough to where you get to a point in the tournament where you have to, it's almost like after the weeds get mowed down, how much better are you then? Purdue's shown that once they mow the weeds down, they beat you. Like when it's the creme de la creme they played against, they've beaten everybody of that caliber all year long. And I think that's because they played the chip on the shoulder and how they're wired. And I think this Big Ten tournament will be no exception, but it won't change any real Purdue fans' expectations. It might change outside world, but like, I think it is important to do whatever it takes to get the number 1 overall seed. just because, Houston and UConn have won so much that you don't want to like have that taken away, because I think on the back end, you're going to get a much favorable 2 and a much favorable 4 seed if you're the number 1 overall. And you just, what I'm saying? Like, I just don't think you want to play with that kind of fire, because I don't think they're going to put, and who knows, they do all kinds of funky stuff, but I don't think they're going to put someone in there that can really give you, like, I think they're going to give you a little bit of a break on who you can play. Like when we saw that bracket reveal, you like Purdue's number 1 overall seed, because some of the seeding things and some of that's changed now too. But like some of the seeding things, it's like you looked at UConn, you're like, man, they got a damn good draw for the number 2 overall team, or 3 or whatever it was at the time. I think 2. They were number 2 team, and you feel like they had a better draw than Purdue. But I think when it scrubs out to when they get it done, I think Purdue will get a better 4 seed draw by being the number 1 overall. And if they slip up, it's like they'll give them a reason to like, let's hand you this shit burger. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think it does really matter. And obviously, to get to the championship game, that shit's done by then. So like, I don't think it matters. But I don't think you can lose your first game, because you lose your first game, the other teams win their conference tournament, they're going to pull you off that shit. Shouldn't, because you go off resume, still the best resume, period. But that's not reality. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think they'll all be here soon enough. That being said, I think that we're going to try to get back on here Wednesday night and preview and hopefully review a couple games from the Big Ten tournament and other conference tournaments, and just get a clear idea of what we're looking at going into Selection Sunday. So,
and obviously we'll have a monster Selection Sunday show too. For sure.
That'll probably involve guests and a longer show for sure. But
definitely.
So we will see.
All right, brother. Well, you have a great 2 days, and boil her up, hammer down, and let's just get healthy and get after it.
There we go.
All right, man.
All right,
Take care, my man.
Have a good night.
Deuces.